Welcome to Integral Life. We live in a truly extraordinary, in many ways unprecedented time. In the history of humankind, there have been perhaps 5 or 6 major worldwide transformations. These are usually counted as foraging, horticultural, agrarian, industrial, and informational. These technological structures were accompanied by and correlated with worldviews that evolved from archaic to warrior magic to traditional mythic to modern rational to postmodern pluralistic. Once a structure has emerged, it remains in existence, and the next structure emerges on top of it, so to speak, or surrounds and engulfs it. Each higher structure transcends and includes its predecessor, exactly as organisms transcend and include cells, cells transcend and include molecules, molecules transcend and include atoms, and so on. In today's Western world, about 30% of the population is traditional mythic or fundamental religious. 40% is modern rational or scientific, and about 25% is postmodern or multicultural. All individuals are born at square one, the archaic, and then grow and develop through the higher stages, magic to mythic to rational to pluralistic, or until their own growth stops at a particular stage, traditional or modern or postmodern or whatnot. But think about it. In all of humanity's hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, only these 5 major evolutionary stages occurred, taking us from our original archaic stages close to the great apes to our foraging, our hunting and gathering stage, starting around 100,000 years ago, to our agricultural stages, horticultural, which is done with a simple digging stick or hoe, starting around 10,000 years ago, to agrarian, with heavy animal-drawn plow, starting around 4,000 years ago, and marking the beginning of the great empires around the world: Greek, Roman, Aztec, Mayan, Inca, Mongol. These dominated until the emergence of the modern scientific worldview, beginning especially with the Renaissance and culminating with the Enlightenment, the beginning of the modern era. And then, starting around 30 or 40 years ago, the emergence of the postmodern stage, with its egalitarianism, pluralism, and multiculturalism. That's a relatively few number, 5 or so, of genuine and deep changes in humanity's worldviews, given its million or so years of evolution. But what's so extraordinary is that today, right now, we are in the midst of yet another and extremely profound worldwide transformation. Just getting started, it is the actual nature of this transformation that makes it so remarkably unprecedented. All of the previous evolutionary stages, archaic, magic, mythic, rational, pluralistic, were marked by a profound belief that their views and values were the only true views and values in existence, and those of all the other stages were infantile, confused, or just plain wrong. Modern scientific view, for example, feels that the mythic traditional religious view is infantile, nothing but variations on Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, with God being nothing but your great big imaginary friend in the sky. The postmodern pluralistic view thinks that both science and religion are not much more than fairy tales, being nothing but largely arbitrary social constructions driven only by various interests and isms, sexism, racism, colonialism, and so on. And that science's truths are no more real or valid than poetry. And the mythic literal or religious view sees both modern science and postmodernism bound for hell and eternal damnation, missing salvation completely. Our ever-present culture wars are driven by the constant warfare between these three major stages: mythic religious, rational science, and post-rational postmodernism. This is what makes this newly emerging present transformation so incredibly unique. This stage is given many names by developmental and evolutionary researchers, but the most common include integrated, systemic, truly holistic, or integral. And it's called integral for a simple reason. Where all the previous stages felt they and they alone were real, the integral stage makes room for all of them. Everybody is right is its motto. That is, every stage is true but partial. And each stage, as we saw, transcends but includes its predecessors, like atoms to molecules to cells to organisms, with each stage becoming fuller and fuller and more inclusive. So by the time we get to integral, it transcends and includes the partial truths of all of the previous stages, magic to mythic to rational to pluralistic. And this means the integral stage is the first stage in all of human history that is truly all-inclusive. Think of it, where every previous stage in human history spent its time in constant warfare with all the other stages: mythic religion in warfare with magic paganism, modern science in warfare with traditional religion, postmodern in warfare with science. The integral stage of human evolution is the first that is radically inclusive of all of them. Its worldview is big enough, wide enough, deep enough to transcend and include all of the partial truths of all of the previous stages. Imagine a society that, instead of constant culture wars, would be a truly inclusive and all-embracing culture, replacing constant conflict with a deep harmony. Individuals themselves would still be at different levels of development as they moved and evolved through the major stages. But the basic principles of the culture would be based on an integral worldview, making room for each and all. Anything like this has ever appeared in human history before. It's astonishing, unbelievable, wild, and remarkable. And it will remake human nature and culture as we know it. Now, as I mentioned, we are just now at the beginning edge of this integral transformation. Research studies show that around 5% of the population has reached the integral stages. But there's a curious event that has marked evolution from the start, and it gives us great hope that we might be feeling the results of this integral transformation sooner rather than later. Namely, the fact of what's known as a tipping point. Because what seems to happen is that when around 10% of the population reaches the leading edge of evolution, the entire culture starts to adopt many of its values. For example, when 10% of the population reached the modern scientific stage, we saw the French and American revolutions, the end of slavery, and the rise of representative democracy. Every previous stage had some form of slavery. But part of the modern stage's inherent beliefs are that humans should be treated fairly, regardless of race, color, sex, or creed. And in a mere 100 years, from 1770 to 1870, slavery was outlawed by every modern rational society the world over. Now, only 10% of the population was actually at the modern stage, which believed in freedom. And yet that was a tipping point that spread the ideas of freedom throughout the entire culture, ending slavery. Likewise, in 1960, only about 3% of the population was at postmodern. But by 1970, it was 10%, and soon 20%. This tipping point set off the entire revolution we think of as the 60s, which included sexual equality, ecological sensitivity, the entire civil rights movement, all driven by the postmodern structure, even though only 10% of the population was actually there. Its values somehow seeped down and permeated the entire culture. Well, there's every reason to think that when integral reaches 10%, which some developmentalists think could occur within a decade, the same type of tipping point and downward seepage and culture saturation could occur with integral values. And the first truly inclusive, non-oppressive cultures in humankind's entire history could begin to emerge. And that would be unprecedented. The world will have never seen anything like this. And you could be a direct participant and co-creator of this extraordinary transformation. One thing is certain: this integral transformation is coming just in time. For the first point in human history, most of humankind's problems are now global, world-centric, or planetary in reach, and actions taken by single nations are useless. Take global warming, for example. If one nation, say the US, cut its carbon emission completely, this would have virtually no major effect. It's a worldwide problem, an integral problem, and virtually all nations must participate in the solution if it is to work at all. The same with all the other wicked problems facing us, from global warming to global economic meltdown to global terrorism to global overpopulation. These are all global, systemic, planetary, integral problems, and they demand integral solutions. Piecemeal, partial, fragmented approaches not only don't help, they hurt. The integral framework is emerging just in time to tackle these integral problems. And the sooner individuals adopt integral thinking, the greater our chances are for heading off these truly wicked problems. All of these factors add up to make today's times truly extraordinary, even radically unique, for both truly positive and exhilarating reasons, as well as negative and deeply problematic ones. And all of them center around what can only be seen as integral issues. We stand truly on the evolutionary edge that, for the first time in all of humankind's history, is profoundly inclusive, comprehensive, all-embracing, all-encompassing. And this integral transformation touches everything that exists. We're seeing the rise of integral medicine, integral education, integral economics and business, integral politics, integral architecture, integral law and ethics, integral spirituality and religion, and integral culture itself, reaching all the way down into the very makeup of those individuals who are themselves a part of this integral transformation. And that almost certainly means you. For those of you who are part of this growing 5%, the world looks very different to you. Abraham Maslow, one of the pioneers in this area, was one of the first to notice the profound differences between those early stages, magic through pluralistic, and the higher integral stages. The earlier stages are driven by what Maslow called deficiency needs. I'm hungry, I lack food, I get food, and hunger deficiency temporarily ends. I lack safety, I search for it. I lack belongingness, I seek it out. I have low self-esteem, I look for it. These are all needs and motivations driven by lack, by deficiency. But then there is that transformation to integral stages, what Claire Graves called, quote, a monumental leap in meaning. And suddenly one becomes so full and overflowing that one's motivation switches from deficiency to abundance, or what Maslow called being drives. Here one is motivated not out of lack or scarcity or poverty, but out of superabundance, fullness, overflowing, as if someone put $1 million in your bank account and your deficiencies evaporate. At these integral stages, everything overflows and is deeply connected to everything else. The world becomes a single interwoven reality. One Gaia, one spirit, one true self, one great web of being, and you are all of that. A wholeness, fullness, richness fills your being and overflows into the entire cosmos. And you are driven by that profound connectivity to everything in the universe. You love more, care more, have more compassion, and wider consciousness. And you are driven by a profound drive, a being drive, to help all people, indeed all sentient beings, find this peace and liberation and love and enlightenment and awakening to their truest and deepest and most profound self and reality. a reality where all things are woven together into a fundamental unity and divine wholeness. And you will never be the same again. And so this is where we stand, my friends, on the very edge of the sixth and in many ways most profound transformation in all of humankind's history. An Integral Institute and Integral Life are organizations dedicated to working at the edge of this transformation, looking for ways to help increase this evolutionary leap and apply its results to every area of human living, looking for ways to foster integral relationships, culture, and community, explore ways to create truly integral medicine and health care, integral education, politics and economics, integral therapy and spirituality and religion, and at the bottom of it all, integral friendship. Finding individuals who, like you, share an integral worldview and are looking for friends to share it with. So I'd like to personally invite you to become a member of Integral Life and join a worldwide net of dedicated, caring, idealistic, integral souls, all open to this extraordinary transformation and ways to help it, share it, celebrate it. This is truly an extraordinary period in human history, completely unprecedented in its depth, profundity, and significance. Won't you come and join us in a conscious membership in this radically integral transformation? We would love to have you as part of this rapidly growing network of conscious evolution. And I promise you, your life will truly never be the same in this community of friendship and superabundance.